Welcome, everybody. My name is Jack Lackey. I'm your DAC president. I appreciate your attendance tonight. Aaron and I were speaking earlier that it's a great night to be on Zoom. Don't know if anyone else had to be out today, but the roads slicked up pretty quickly this evening. Aaron and I are really excited about tonight's meeting. We had some two initiatives that the board tasked us with this year. We will update you on the SAC initiative, but the other one we were able to pick up and move quickly with, and that's going to be the focus tonight. We appreciate Dave joining us to talk about the UIP. Priscilla will be joining us in a few minutes when she's finished with another meeting. And so we're happy to be able to pick up the ball and keep it moving this school year in this context. Our agenda tonight is we're going to do some quick intros that Aaron will handle here in a minute. We will address the SAC work, the School Accountability Committee. We have an infrastructure update. So another one of the goals this year was to get the DAC structurally more sound moving into future years. And then we're going to jump into the UIP simplification project, which is the second initiative we have from the board this year. So we'll focus most of our 90 minutes on that, and we will wrap up with some next steps and get everyone out of here by 8:30. So Aaron, I will let you handle the intros now.
Great. All right. So rather than the round robin, I'm hoping by now these faces are starting to look familiar, if nothing else. So I think what I'd like to do is just do a quick check-in for folks, your name, maybe your school affiliation, your role, if you're a teacher, an administrator, a parent, community member, and then, with resolutions being what they are as we head into 2021. I've been having quite the sweet tooth lately, so I'm going to ask everybody to identify your favorite dessert. So if you do name, school affiliation, role, and favorite dessert, you can put that in the chat. We'll learn a bit about each other. That would be lovely. While we wait for maybe a few more folks, it looks like, to be joining us. And then, yeah, this is going to be fun. And again, I think most of you know I have a cooking affinity, so might give me some inspiration.
Oh, we've got a cake and pie battle going already.
I know, right? Yeah, I think Jamie, my husband, his favorite birthday cake is a 7-layer dip. He also, not a big fan. That's what he asked for his birthday cake. Okay.
Key lime pie.
I know, right? Ah. This is great, you guys. Thank you. Could have a little Reese's peanut butter dessert tray. All right. And with that, I think, Jack, we can probably go ahead and get started as folks are kind of filling in a few of these.
Great.
If you want to kick off our update.
Sure. Next item on the agenda is the SAC project update. As we communicated in an email previously, the school district went back to some in-person learning this week and needed to prepare for that. I can't imagine the hours and logistics behind that, but understandably requested a timeout on staff involvement, which was primarily focused towards school principals, which was going to be the recipient of our survey and the time expected to complete that, as well as the feedback that we got from this group, which was to roll it out at different levels to prep principals, that the expectation was coming and the reasoning behind it. So appropriately, we tabled that. Which I think was good in a way, because we've requested a survey platform through the district, which hasn't happened yet, but that is in the works, and that would give us some time to have a more formal platform to distribute and receive those results. There is a new term I learned through this called level meetings, and apparently that is the different levels of school principals that meet. And there's a meeting on February 9th where we have a few minutes blocked out for Aaron and or I to prep the principals as to what's coming, the purpose of the survey, what we hope to achieve, the reason or rationale behind it, and cue up that a video is coming, that second level of marketing, and then we'll get it distributed. So we expect to be able to distribute and get results of that survey in February, and then this group can continue the work.
Hey, Jack, I do have an update on our survey platform. We use Google Forms, and once you all get this email access that we're working on for you, you'll have access to that platform. So that's a quick update for you. I would like to be able to send the principals the agenda for the 4th. Did I say that date right? I can't remember if I said that date right.
I have the 9th.
The 9th, sorry. And in that, give them some context about this agenda item. So I will be reaching out to you and Aaron just to get kind of a general idea of what you want me to say to them in terms of what the agenda item's called and a little bit of context for it. And then I would just say to the principals on the call, as Jack and Aaron join us, if you want to jump in with some context for your colleagues and just say, I've been part of the DAC and this is the real intent, I'll make sure that you get any information that Jack and Aaron send to me and Priscilla. I'll make sure that you guys get that too, so you can think about what you might want to say to your colleagues. But I think having your voice in the room could be helpful and comforting to your colleagues as this information shared with them. And I think it'll go just fine. But wanted to just say those few things about this topic.
Great, thank you. Any questions on that? The SAC update? Any burning questions, follow-ups to the survey work we did last time? All right, then we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is the infrastructure update. Again, one of the goals Aaron and I have for this school year is to build the DAC to be a bit more autonomous and official. One of the ways we wanted to start that is to get district email addresses, and that happened last week. So thank you, Tracy, for pulling those levers. The next communication that comes from me will be from dacpresident@adams12.org. Hopefully there aren't any spam filter issues with that. I've got to learn how to use the Google platform. That's one that I just don't use regularly. So bear with me. Hopefully the scheduling snafu and the ability to respond for tonight won't be an issue when I get onto that platform. As you just heard, we will be getting survey access within the district. I don't know that we'll use that a lot, certainly for the SAC work, but the other avenue we see is with an end of the year survey for this group. Did we meet your expectations? Where can we improve? That sort of thing, so that we can advance the ball each year. We've also requested board docs training and some ramp up there so that we can post official documents on that platform. For Aaron and I guess to open the kimono a little bit, it's been really challenging for us to maintain documents on the Google Drive that we own privately, plus what's shared by the district, and knowing what's for public consumption, what's a draft, what's a work in process. And so for the board docs concept, knowing that we're putting it up, it's a final public facing document. And so we've requested some training around that. There's no date set. pretty much at the district's whim there when some time frees up, but that request has been made. And then also
Jack,
we've requested, yes.
Could I just do one sort of, I would say also hierarching commitment around that board docs. And I think we'll see this a bit in the next item as well, but just the idea also that as a board committee that we are being transparent and providing that accessibility to the public. And I think as we continue with our DAC structure work, wanting to be more intentional and connected about the role of this group with the sort of the community engagement side. And so board docs really creates the avenue for us to be able to, again, I think as Jack alluded to, provide more transparency, but then those avenues for communication and community presence.
That was the last bullet, so thank you very much. The other item that we requested was some training and information on transparency rules and guidelines for the DAC, to Aaron's point. So leadership, we want to understand what that is and what the expectations are so that we can develop more of a process around what we do and what we post as a committee. So thank you for mentioning that, Aaron. Any questions on that? There's a lot more we want to do around infrastructure, but you know, some of the basics are done, and we're glad to advance that effort. All right, we are right on time. So we're going to jump into the UIP simplification project. You may recall there were two that Jamie and Lori put out for us to work on this year. And the simplification effort is, in a nutshell, how can we provide feedback to the district to communicate the information that's in the UIP, either executive summary or formal plan, so that it's digestible to the general public, whether through terminology, numbers, or graphics, all of the above. And so we are going to start that work tonight. I have a link that I will paste in the chat in case you don't have it already. That is the work memo, sort of a memo of understanding that gets everybody on the same page about what we're here to accomplish. I will also share my screen. I think we had issues with being able to read it at that Zoom level. Can I get some feedback on that?
It's tiny, Jack. You might need to zoom in on it a little bit.
All right, so that's doubled in size. Hopefully that works.
Much better.
Great. So this is UIP simplification. The summary of work, I'll let you read that. It's basically what I just stated. The Board of Education. This document, to refresh your memory, is getting the district, the DAC, and the Board of Education on the same page about the intent, what completion looks like, what success looks like for the work, and what the deliverables might be. And these two bullets were populated by Lori and Jamie. So this comes directly from them. And as I scroll farther, all the work that we do, we want to connect back to the district strategic plan known as Elevate. And so we have tied that in writing in this document so that we're cognizant of those efforts. And then where appropriate, we want to link statutes or bylaws that relate to the work so that we know we're operating within the guidelines that we've set or that the board has set for ourselves, as well as district policy that applies. And to the best of our knowledge, there are no references for this particular work. While we are by statute expected to provide feedback on the UIP. This is separate and different from that work, this simplification effort. So that's not in our bylaws. And then we're also not aware of district policy that specifically addresses the UIP. So if there are attendees with different understandings or knowledge, now would be a great time to comment so that we can get this updated. Milestones, we believe that this project can be completed this school year, so May-ish. The goals, we want to develop the whole DAC awareness. If you recall from last year and years prior, we tended to work in our own silos and didn't have much cross-pollination of knowledge. And so we want to capitalize on that opportunity with this project and tonight with Dave being here. So that can help us with the recommendations. We believe we'll be forming focus groups with this group, the DAC, and the public. So there'll be some outreach opportunities to get feedback on this simplification. What do people know? What do they understand? What questions do they have around the UIP? And then we believe the district communications team will have some mock-ups based on some of that initial feedback for additional feedback from us and the focus group. So that's how we believe the work will go this year, with the deliverable being a recommendation of a simplified document related to content and graphics. So we're not expected to tap any of you with graphic design skills to create a deliverable. We'll certainly take that if it's available, but that's not the expectation. And we also wanted to point out that there may be an opportunity for the DAC to have an ongoing role in how the UIP information is communicated to the community. So I was 3 lines away from my goal of keeping this to a 1-page document, but that is it. We can distribute that upon request, but that is sort of the boundaries of the work. If there are questions or comments, we would like to address those now and get that into the document so we can function accordingly. Going once. All right, then Aaron, I will turn it over to you and Dave from this point forward. Dave is up next on the agenda with an overview of what the UIP is, and he's got some slides to present as well.
Yep, so maybe just a quick high-level overview. We recognize some of you have been working more intimately with the UIP subcommittee and or through your professional role, but we have others who are not as familiar. So we're going to take the next bit to do a bit of grounding for everybody whole group. And then we're going to break into some breakouts. So just to kind of let you know, we're going to be doing some general information level setting and then heading into some more processing opportunities. So that's sort of next on the agenda.
Can I add one more thing, Erin, that I think has been an important part of the conversation with you and Jack and Jamie and Lori? When you all did the survey of the whole DAC last year, a point of feedback from this group was that you wanted better connections across the subcommittees. And that oftentimes, the groups weren't always making the connections that made sense if you had a bigger picture perspective across the groups. And so I think there is some interest in doing this work this year at a higher level as a whole group, in the interest of the whole group understanding what the UIP is, what it has in it, so that some of those connections can be made as we move the work forward. Is that a fair statement? Does that represent accurately what you all have talked about and an interest you have, but really it's feedback from the whole DAC as well. And I think an interest of the whole group.
You said it perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure people understood, especially given that their role and responsibility in this group for the UIP piece is shifting a little bit for some. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. And I think, again, just to do some of that grounding, Dave has prepared some presentations, which will be great for those of us that are visual people. This will be helpful. So Dave, I think hopefully you have everything you need. Mm-hmm. And we'll let you take it away.
Yep. Evening, everybody. It's actually great to see a lot of the folks here tonight are on the UIP subcommittee group. So it's great to see all of your faces. We haven't had a chance to connect much this year, given everything that's going on. So I was asked to present, or share a few slides and to keep it to about 10 minutes, with questions involved about the UIP. This may be, some of you may be far more familiar with this. And so feel free to ask questions as we go along, but let me go ahead and share my screen with the slides. Is everybody seeing that? Okay, so basically want to provide a high-level overview of the UIP and kind of lead us into the project that we're starting tonight around this simplification template and process. So first, in terms of what the district UIP or Unified Improvement Plan is, it's a 2-year plan created to focus on areas highlighted in the state accountability system. In the lower right-hand corner, you'll see our district performance framework from 2019. There was no new one for 2020. And this is how the state accredits districts and then the district accredits schools. But it's based on formulas and processes developed by the state. And really, it focuses on, when we're thinking about the district, 3 key areas: academic achievement, academic growth, and post-secondary and workforce readiness. All of these are important. We would, clearly understand that. Achievement is based on really mostly CMAS and PSAT, SAT, although there is some information from K3 for the READ Act. Growth is based on the CMAS and grades really 4 through 8, because you have to have a couple years of data before you can calculate growth, but also PSAT and SAT. And then post-secondary workforce readiness is a number of indicators like grad rate, dropout rate, matriculation rate. And so all of those data are then combined, put into an algorithm to determine the relative ranking of a district. And so once those SPFs and DPFs come out, the district performance frameworks, we are then charged as a district to develop a 2-year plan called a Unified Improvement Plan. Traditionally, it was developed every year, but recently there was an opportunity for a biennial year of flexibility, and that's what we're using right now. If districts are fully accredited or accredited with distinction, they can choose to not formally develop a UIP in a particular year, and that's what we're doing given all of the things that are going on. The board okayed that. A common question that comes up about the district UIP is then how does that relate to Elevate? Elevate is our large strategic plan focused on many areas. And when you look to the left, you'll see the 6 major focuses of Elevate: 21st century learners, diverse learning, outside the classroom learning, safe schools, social emotional learning, and world-class staff. Now, there are overlaps between the district UIP and Elevate. Elevate is a broader, more encompassing plan focused on all 6 of these. When you think about those indicators that we looked at on the previous slide in terms of achievement, growth, and post-secondary workforce readiness, really where we see some overlap with the UIP is primarily with 21st century learners and diverse learning. But also we do see some overlap with world-class staff, because in the UIP, you'll see a lot of information about professional development, trying to help teachers, administrators, district folks develop themselves so they can better affect the outcomes for students. So there is overlap with the district UIP. If we're thinking of a Venn diagram, this is what we would call a nested Venn diagram, where the Elevate is a large circle and the UIP falls within that circle. Now, the UIP development process is cyclical, it's dynamic, it's not a plan that's just created and sits on a shelf. We're constantly looking at data and looking at what we're doing in terms of implementation benchmarks and measurements. This is a slide taken right from CDE about how this process works. And those of you that have been on the UIP subcommittee are familiar with these. Basically, if you're starting from square one, you begin by gathering and organizing data, and that's all kinds of data, not just assessment data, survey data, process data, all sorts of other data, curriculum coverage data, everything there that you can gather, attendance, discipline, so forth. Then you review all that data, and once you review it, you determine what significant trends are, especially as it relates to those three areas: achievement, growth, and post-secondary and workforce readiness. Obviously, when you're looking at trends, you're going to see some things that are favorable, that are trending in the right direction, some things that are kind of stagnant, and then some things that may not be trending in the right direction. And really, once we think about the UIP, after you get to this significant trend space, you're starting to look at, okay, where are our deficits? How can we improve as a system? From that, you identify what are called priority performance challenges. These are the broad challenges that we see that we really need to improve upon to improve the outcomes for our students. They could be in any of those three areas. And the state specifically says, if you are not scoring at a meets expectation level in achievement, growth, or post-secondary and workforce readiness, you need to have a priority performance challenge in that particular area. In our district UIP, we met in growth, but did not meet in achievement and post-secondary and workforce readiness. So we have to have priority performance challenges there. Then once you have identified your priority performance challenges, it really gets more challenging because you have to dig into what the root causes are. And one of the most difficult aspects of the UIP is determining what are the basic root causes, because you can identify symptoms, often things that you think might be caused. When you affect those, it doesn't really change the outcome for students. So that's the process that's often the most challenging. Once you have your root causes and your priority performance targets, you set performance targets for yourself, goals, so to speak, and identify measures that help you track those goals. And in terms of the root causes, to get rid of those, to eliminate those, you identify major improvement strategies and have benchmarks for those strategies that you can monitor throughout the year. And that's really the process. Again, it doesn't look set up cyclically, but this is something that you're continuing to go back to look at trends and then reprioritize challenges, look at root causes and so forth. And so that's the process that we engage in. Finally, what comes of this is a full UIP document that we submit to the state. Ours is over 40 pages long. We submit it through an online system. When that was the only document we submitted to the board, there was some desire from the board to condense it a bit and make it a little bit more digestible for them and a little bit more succinct. So what we came up with is this idea of the executive summary, which I believe Jack shared both of these documents with you. I'm sure he spent many, many beautiful hours reading through both of them, but obviously it's important to have some context. So the executive summary gets things down to about 14 pages, which has been a positive step, but ultimately there's still a lot of dense language in there that if you're not familiar with, it can be very difficult to navigate. And the typical parent who's not used to this information, it's a challenge for them to digest it. So your challenge, should you choose to accept it, is to then think about how do we take the 40-page and the 14-page document and condense it into something far simpler and a little bit more user-friendly for a typical parent, that they can then have an idea of what is the focus of the district and how are we going about our work to improve outcomes for students. So that was basically what I wanted to share with the group. And I know you're coming from very different places in terms of your knowledge of the UIP. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you might have at this point.
So I might just ask, in terms of questions, if these are definitely things that would benefit the group in terms of sort of the task in front of us. I think, there's definitely things we could dive into, but wanting to make sure, what's going to help us really understand or help you understand the task of that simplification. Wow, everybody's got it. We're good.
Well, I'll go first. So in my invitation, I said a lack of exposure to the UIP and UIP process might prove to be very beneficial in this effort. I'll put myself out there, right? As the DAC president, I know very little about the UIP process. I'm lucky to know what the 3 letters stand for. When we talk about the DPF, District Performance Framework, is that something that we create or identify, or is that a state measurement, or what is that and where does that come from?
That's a state created document. They create a district performance framework for every district in the state. Districts have an option to come up with their own process of creating a performance framework, but very few districts do that and have the bandwidth to do it like Denver does it, but very few do that. So this is a standard process that the state conducts using standard procedures and algorithms to generate the outcomes on that report.
And then how do we measure performance in those 3 categories? Where does that data come from?
It comes from various places. So in the achievement area, what we're talking about generally is average scale score on a number of assessments. It's really, other than post-secondary and workforce readiness, it is state assessment based. And there are also a couple other exceptions that I'll talk about. So CMAS tests, which are given in grades 3 through 8, PSAT in 9 and 10, and SAT in 11. Also, we give READ Act assessments. The READ Act is an early literacy assessment or a requirement. It's a law that requires that we assess students in grades K through 3 using one of a variety of a menu of assessments the state has approved. We use PALS in our district. So really, the achievement data is based on all that information. Growth is based on how do students do on those particular assessments, in this case, CMAS, PSAT, SAT, but also the access assessment, which is the assessment that measures English language acquisition by our ELLs, our English language learners. They look at, okay, how much growth did a student make from year to year? And it's a normative approach based on something called, it's a longitudinal growth model. And so what it looks at is it's a normative measure. So it's not like saying, as a 3rd grader, if you make 15 points of growth, you have met growth. It all depends on who you start with. So if I'm a low performing student, let's say my scale score in 3rd grade is, I don't know, 700. And then I test in 4th grade and my scale score moves up to 710. I've made 10 points of growth. To determine how much I've grown, though, what they do is compare my growth of 10 points to everyone else who started at 700. If my growth of 10 points is more than everyone else, my growth percentile is the 99th percentile. If everyone grew 10 points or more, I'm at the 1st percentile of growth. So the measures that we're looking at in growth are typically centered at the 50th percentile. So we're looking at, we want our median growth percentiles, our average growth percentile, to be as high as possible, preferably above 50, which is average growth. And so we look at that growth for CMAS, PSAT, SAT, and access. So that's growth. There's also a new metric that's very new that was just included called growth to standard. It has a very little weight, and what it's looking at is how am I doing in my trajectory to get to the next performance level? There are 5 performance levels on the CMAS assessment. So it's looking at, if I'm in level 2, am I in trajectory over a certain period of time to get to level 3? Because the thing about normative growth, it doesn't really tell you, are you getting to the end goal? It just compares you how you're doing to everyone else. This growth to standard tells me, am I getting up to the next performance level? And so that was something very new from the state. And then lastly, in terms of post-secondary workforce readiness, there are a number of metrics that the state gathers, things like graduation rate, things like matriculation rate, which is what percentage of our students are going on to 4-year, 2-year, and CTE programs or graduate with a CTE certificate. So they're all outcomes measured by the state as we look at each of those indicators. So they're really assessment-based or these outcome measures that the state has traditionally gathered.
Thank you. I have 2 more questions, but I definitely want to give others an opportunity.
I also want to clarify, this is obviously not your only opportunity to pose questions. So if other things come up in the course of our breakout conversations, we will also have another opportunity to address those questions.
Dave, who determines the trends? The data can be crunched or analyzed in different ways. So who is it that determines what trends are relevant or important or even noticed and presented for an effort?
I'll share my thinking about this. I did also, there are some thoughts that the UIP subcommittee members would like to share about this, happy for them to chime in. The procedure we've taken is initially I just present the raw data to them on these various metrics, tabular or graphical format for people to see. Don't want to necessarily interpret that information. I'd like people to see the raw data, but in the interest of time, what I generally do is I draft trend statements based on my review of the data, because with our limited time together, it's very difficult to draft all these trend statements in committee, if that makes sense. So I develop then based on the raw data, which I share with all the UIP subcommittee members. I then draft trend statements that try to capture that and really kind of highlight what looks to be significantly positive, what seems to be kind of status quo or flat trends, and what seems to be considerably negative. And we've found a lot of success in color coding that data. Green for positive trends, red for negative trends, sort of a standard black font for trends that aren't notable. And then in the subcommittee, we discuss every single one of those draft trends, and people can propose other trends that they're seeing in the data. The tricky part then comes about determining which of them are notable. Traditionally, we've just kind of listed them all. One thing I might be interested in doing going forward is really highlighting the notable trends, either positive or negative. Sometimes a flat trend is notable. So, that's really a decision for the committee to make. But again, I'd encourage any of the members of the UIP subcommittee to comment on what I just said and see if that's their recollection and understanding of the process.
All right, Jack, I think you said, is this one more question, like one of those that?
No, in the interest of time, we can move on to breakouts. I'll definitely put it on our sheet though.
Great. Okay. All right. So folks, our next step in this process, we are going to break out into, given the number of folks that we have here this evening, we're going to break out into 2 groups. And I'm putting in the message, the sort of the process that we'll be using for these breakouts. We'd like to start with having 2 minutes of silent reflection. And then we're going to use a tool called the Jamboard. I'm sure many of you have become familiar with this tool. And I'd like to just quickly do, again, a walkthrough for those of you who might not be familiar with it. So I'm just going to share real quickly. So this is what your Jamboard will look like. We have 3 categories that we'd like folks to think about. The first is aspirations. What are the things that we would want to see or have in a simplified document? I would say these are probably some higher level goals or aspirations. I think The next category in terms of opportunities for improvement presents probably a little bit more specific reaction to what do we have currently. I think perhaps unintentionally, Dave was making some references to opportunities about our, hefty 40-page documents, maybe a bit jargon laden, where we could do better. So this might be a place for sort of reacting to the current state. And then again, an opportunity for questions. So what we'd like to do is have folks take a little bit of silent write time to get their ideas up on this Jamboard, engage in some discussion, have some clarification probes on some of those comments that might need a little bit more detail. And in terms of the logistics of actually getting your ideas up there, this Jamboard has a feature where you can write little sticky notes. So you can just pop open a sticky note, write your comment here, and then post it, and it will automatically get put up on the Jamboard. And so then you can move it to the right area, okay? And again, we're just gonna use this as an opportunity. This is our digital giant sticky note and little post-it activity. And because we're gonna use two groups, we're gonna have two different Jamboards, and you navigate between each one up here at the top. So if you're in group 2, you'll be with Jack. Oh, and apparently I forgot to label myself. I'll be facilitating group 1. And so that's how you will navigate that. Let's see here. One thing I'm also going to ask is that each group selects a facilitator to report out some high-level themes. And then we'll talk about sort of some quick clarification or questions that we can address. So that's sort of going to be the process. And then the last item here I'm going to do is get the Jamboard open and make sure that everybody can get that. So here we go. Jamboard coming at you. Are there questions about either the instructions or navigating the Jamboard?
I wasn't sure how we know which group we're in. Did I miss that?
So in just a moment, with the fabulous help of our tech team at the district, you'll be sorted into a group. And I believe there's a little tag that'll be up in the right-hand side. Team 2, actually, I think we need to make sure those line up, Jack, that you'll be team 2 and I'll be team 1. If not, we'll figure that out very quickly.
And Aaron, I'm just gonna jump in and let people know that Priscilla and Dave and I are mostly gonna be just observers, listeners, because we want the DAC membership voice to engage, but we'll be here listening in and just hearing the context. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And Priscilla, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Any other questions or points for clarification before we head in? Okay, Roddy, I think we're ready. We're gonna go, I think we're in a good position to go for about 20 minutes on this. So I'd say have fun with your conversation. We're really looking forward to the observations that folks have. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hope you had some good conversations. Jack, did you guys designate a reporter?
We did, Mackenzie.
Great.
But we're good too, so you have to go first.
Okay. No, well, I just wanted to do a quick process check. So our group, I'm going to be quiet for a little bit, and we have somebody with some enthusiasm on this topic aside from myself. So Laura, would you mind just doing a quick summary from our team?
You've done well that people are describing that I have enthusiasm for the UIP. I guess here's what I sort of wrote down as we were talking about kind of themes that seem to come up from our group. One main thing was trying to make clear the relevance of the UIP to community members and parents, but also staff members within the district, so that everyone kind of understands why this document exists and perhaps why we're doing certain things in the district, why we are doing the things in the district that we are doing. As a piece of that, to a goal to make it clear about what its purpose is. And then kind of just two other things that seem to come up within the group is to have some sort of interactive visual that people can access to get this information about the UIP and understand it, and have it be something that is layered, so that if I'm a community member and I just want to have a very general, broad understanding of the district and what they're doing in regards to achievement, growth, and workforce readiness, I can get that and move on my merry way. Or if I'm someone who wants to have that information and understand what CMAS measures and understand what matriculation rates are and know the little details of all the trend statements, that I could also have access to that or be able to understand that. If my group thinks I missed something important, please speak up.
I think we covered a lot of ground, which got captured on our sticky notes, which is great. Okay, group 2, you ready?
Oh, sure. Why not? We spent a good 5 minutes of the beginning of our session just kind of talking about what we were talking about, kind of getting a better definition of what this document was that we were discussing, kind of like you said, the objective. And I think a big question was, who is the audience for this? And some of us understood it to be parents, some of us understood it to be teachers. And I think the word we landed on was that the audience is the community. And so we kind of used that to kind of have the rest of our discussion. Some people reflected on the value of some of the documents that already exist and the value of that to the schools, the value of that to teachers, administrators in the different schools, and how they use this current data to kind of make decisions, and that data is really relevant for them. We talked about how even within schools there are UIPs, and so this idea of kind of having the nested UIP. So you have the school UIP and then the district UIP, and kind of understanding the relationships between those two things, but definitely talking about having a more user-friendly format, and that our goal really is to design a template for future simplification efforts. So what we're doing right now is trying to define and create the process and the template for future simplification efforts. And so it's a one-time effort to create that simplification, but it will be an ongoing process to replicate that. I'm sure I missed something, but what did I miss, guys?
I think that was good. That was a good summary.
Great, thank you. And actually, I think we don't have a whole lot of, I would say, direct action. Clearly, we are not coming up with a template tonight. But I would like to maybe take just a moment, and I am going to put Lori and Jamie a little bit on the spot. There are a couple of questions that I saw here about, I'm looking at group 2 about who is the intended audience. We had a question, have parents asked for a parent-friendly version? And then there was a question also about the connection to schools. So if I could have Jamie and Lori maybe just do a high level response to, I think some of the drivers, which dives a little bit into our memo, but if you guys would be willing to speak to that for maybe just a moment, that might be helpful in setting the direction.
Well, my thoughts are, if, you know, this is something we have to do, and if we're going to do it, it needs to be relevant for all the stakeholders. I'm a little concerned that I hear that, you know, even at the staff level, that they're not very familiar with this. Just because my experiences in schools, we always, in this last school I taught at, we always knew what our UIP goals were. And we also had to come up with a plan of how we were going to get them. And so if you have these goals, and, you know, the people that have to achieve these goals are the staff. And so they need to understand what it is that they're trying to do. And then, you know, as a parent, I would want to know what my school is doing to improve the outcomes for my child. So if you've got this nebulous UIP that nobody understands, then it's not effective. I mean, you're jumping through the hoops that you have to jump through by statute, but I think there's so much more value added if the community involved understands it and how it works and how they can contribute to it. That's my 2 cents worth.
And I might approach it by saying, no one has specifically said, I'm never going to get through this 40-page document and I need you to give me something else. But I think we get other sorts of related questions like, what does this CMAS data actually mean? What do these RIT scores mean? What exactly is this growth actually meaning for my child? You know, when you do the district-wide data, like, how do I compare where my kid is with the whole district? So I think we get some questions that really would potentially be solved by having this document to say, we've got this really great UIP that really helps you understand CMAS. You know, in some of those things, like I saw this thing about a glossary, and, you know, there's another one in group 2 about linking to these places. And so is it, you know, what Laura mentioned, you might have the surface level folks who are just like, what are the scores looking like? But other folks who want to dig in deeper. And I might throw in, you know, I mentioned to group 2 that prospective parents are potentially also a group that this may target, because I think oftentimes somebody's like, well, I looked at the blah, blah, blah website and your school district score is XYZ and I want to smack somebody. Because it's not a good, you know, right? Like that one number isn't a good picture of what our district is doing. And I kind of grab my Elevate pamphlet from, you know, the kitchen table and go, take a look at this, right? And I think in my head, looking at one of those questions about what's that experience we want people to have, I want people to get that sense of, you know, Adams 12 cares, right? That's one of our things. And the way in which we do that is very thoughtful, academic approaches, which you would see in the UIP, right? Like it talks about these scores create these trends. And here's why, even though we've seen some shifts, we're staying the course, and how we think that's really going to impact our kids.
Great. That is helpful actually to hear from both of you as well. I think in terms of sort of scope setting for this project. And then there is a bit of a theme that did show up in both groups about the relationship of school to district. And I think, Dave, are you in a position to sort of respond to that? You know, is it district down or school up, or how does that relationship go?
I don't think it's one or the other. It's a little bit of both. As we go through the process, what we've done oftentimes is I reach out to the principals and the SAC parent co-chairs to say, help us understand what are your priority performance challenges, what are your root cause, and what are your major improvement strategies. So we're getting information from them as they're developing theirs. And I know in having conversations with principals and others in the system, it's beneficial for the schools to see, are we aligned with where the district is going? And if we're not, is there a good reason for why we're not aligned? So for example, the major focus of our district UIP for a number of years, 5-6 years, has been literacy. That doesn't preclude a school from focusing on math or something else if their data are trending in such a way that that's a significant need. But there's this sort of symbiotic relationship between the two, where we gather information from the schools to see, is everybody focusing on something other than what we're intending to focus on? And then the schools can see, are we aligned? And if we're not, is that purposeful, and is that meaningful, and is still okay? So the one thing I'd say is the district in my time, and I've been, with the district, this is my 11th year, has gotten to be more systemic, to try and have not a top-down approach, but saying, here's our general focus, here's the sandbox. Now let's all figure out how we play within this sandbox to improve the outcomes for students. So I think I have seen that as a positive trend in the district. So that would be my response. I don't know if Tracy and/or Priscilla would have a different response, but and when I work with the district UIP subcommittee and schools, those are the conversations I've had.
I agree with you, Dave. Yes, everything you said.
Okay. So Jack, I'm going to make an attempt at sort of doing, I would say, some super high level synthesis. I think this has been, at least I can speak for our group, a really good conversation about different perspectives. I think some different values. I think one of the things that definitely came out were areas that are, quite frankly, well out of the DAC's purview. Not a bad thing, but just sort of recognizing it. And so I think one of the things that is going to be helpful in terms of next steps is really clarifying what are the things that we are seeing, what is appropriate to continue within the scope of this project from the DAC perspective, and what are things that might, again, be better to hand off to district staff to address in their operations. And so I think we're going to take all of these sticky notes and questions and sort of do a little sort, like what makes sense. And then I think propose some next steps for the UIP. Jack already, I think, alluded to a bit, how do we actually come up with something that's a little bit more concrete for people to react to? We might have an intermediate step where we look at maybe prioritizing something. So there'll be a prioritization step. And then, like I said, I think I'll defer a little bit in terms of sort of the district and what they're in a position to tackle, given some of the inputs from this conversation. So Jack and I think Tracy, Dave, or Priscilla, if there's other things that you would suggest or like to add, please do so. Wow, that's a conversation killer. A lot of opportunity, yes.
Aaron, I'll jump in. There will be some intermediate meetings, planning sessions, if you will. Aaron and I would really like to have a couple of the DAC UIP subcommittee members. That is most of this year's group. If we could get, well, anyone who's interested, but at least a couple of you to volunteer to meet outside of these meetings, maybe once or twice for an hour. That would help. It would help us with the next steps that we're going to take with the district, with your knowledge and experience with Dave and the UIP. So we would like to get a couple of volunteers tonight, and we'll figure out when we can meet remotely, virtually, before the next meeting to advance this project. This would be the audience participation part.
This is Erin Gee. I'd be happy to help out with that. I'm actually super excited about doing this template idea. So is that what you're asking for help around specifically?
Yes.
Yeah.
I know my voice doesn't convey it often, I'm told that, but I am equally excited about what this group can do with regards to this simplification project. I think so many angles that we can hit. So
no, I was
if
totally
Aaron's
picking up on
excitement is better.
All right,
If
Laura,
Aaron-
it's not just you with some enthusiasm.
Can we get one more?
I can help.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Either one.
Actually, potentially both.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's good to have a backup.
So I have Aaron, Mackenzie, and Derek. Thank you very much for that. We do still need a secretary, communications person on the leadership team here. So you're motivated now. Let's continue. We'll take a hand there. But that's what we wanted to accomplish tonight. We will follow up through email with next steps. Our next meeting is on your calendars. So that was sent out. Look for communications from the new DAC emails. And Aaron, is there anything else that we need to hit before we wrap up for the night?
I think that was our agenda. Again, we hope that this has been productive and engaging in terms of your time and contribution. I feel like I can definitely echo that the conversation was beneficial, and I felt like continued the momentum. So I'm very hopeful.
All right. Well, with that, we can sign off. Thank you, everyone, for.
Wow. 2 minutes early.
Yeah, we are. Hurry up and leave so we can say that.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.